Hello, this is Earl Weinberg, and this is Book Circle Presents The Cavalry Cycle. This time we're going to continue our reading of Bonfire Night. I heard you wondering how Coy keeps from turning satyr when he's around them so much, said the insectile wizard in Fletcher's palm, who had given the use name of Faleno. It's because I gave him a charm against it. The deal is, when the charm finally fails and he turns, I get him. I did not, Faleno hurried to say, do anything to make the charm liable to failure. The bodily part is tough enough. It's a tattoo on his scalp under the hair on the back of his head. Like this. An arm the dimensions of an eyelash gestured up, and a symbol flickered briefly in green firefly light. The curling V of an Aries symbol. It requires only a modest supply of V, chi, prana, what you will, to keep running, like those nice glamours you gentlemen wear. You did know you were powering them, didn't you? Fletcher nodded. I expected to sleep well tonight, though now I wonder. A nicely performed chuckle came out of the air above Fletcher's palm. Well, I am not here to cause trouble. We made this deal as a game, a contest between us. Coy intended that the charm should never fail, that he would keep it going throughout his life. But I saw recklessness and poor planning in him, so I thought my odds were good. And here we are. When you, Madame Delahaye, take your due, your spell will pull all the magic out of him, or its worth in money, until the debt is paid. If it ever is completely, when my charm is emptied, the satyrism will no longer wait and he will change on the spot. This spot, tonight. Then he's mine. Fletcher felt the snowflake-like weight on his palm and reflected that no matter how his next question was answered, he had no power to force the outcome, however things looked. The energy in an insect's body, fully converted, was enough to destroy a city. The magic in this insect was of similar magnitude. What will you do with him? You know, I can feel your palm grow colder under my feet. Don't worry, Captain. I'm not going to lay eggs in him and have my larvae eat him up or anything like that. But he's a child of Adam, just as you three are. That has its uses. You are, for this age, the stewards of this world. You have the right to do things that other orders can only hope to get away with. You can name things effortlessly and have it stick. And there's nothing you can't experience. All knowledge, good and evil, Fletcher murmured. Right. You're an explorer, Captain. That's what you teach your students. I'm an explorer too, along with my colleagues. Like you, we are poking around the edges of reality to see what we can see. Different edges, but the same idea. Coy will be our scout, our probe. He will experience what we cannot, and we will learn from him. Sanders cleared his throat and said, There are a few million sundered children of Adam in the world. I notice you don't have a volunteer from among them. Well, no, Faleno admitted. You are setting him to experience things that ancient and powerful magical beings cannot, said Fletcher, or dare not. Captain, you are in excellent health for your age and for both your species, but still in 100 years' time, you will be in a far more remarkable realm, experiencing things far more extraordinary than anything I could put Coy through. I won't be trying to drive him mad with strangeness. Fletcher sighed. You've bet yourself to a bug, Donovan summed up, and the bet comes due at 11, because your charm goes away when this mortal creditor collects. I thought it would be easy to keep the charm up, Coy said miserably. Please, Mr. Vimont, you see why I must get the money, or the chi. I am sorry, old lad, Vimont replied. I simply don't have it. I'm a little hazy on my bank balance just now, but it's nowhere near. Well, I'll check. He pulled his phone off his belt and consulted. No, I'm sorry, old lad, nothing like enough. But, I have had an idea. I'll call my dad. After all, he added diffidently as he poked at his phone, it's not for me. Donovan pondered as he watched Vimont duck his head and turn away. This looked rather odd with the glamour, the horse pivoting, seeking privacy along with the man. Donovan and his classmates lived in each other's saddlebags, so he had come to know Vimont well in the 4 months since their transformations. He knew Vimont had called home only twice, once to report with pride on being top of the class in horse care, once to ask, poor bugger, if he could come home for Christmas. Fortunately, the answer, loud enough to hear without the phone being on loudspeaker, had been, "Of course you're coming home. I order you to come home." And Vimont had been told to never call home for money, so he did not make this call lightly. Therefore, he must believe coy. Donovan was not certain he did himself, though the fellow's dread seemed genuine. Baron Vimont, though, was not here to see that. Now, what was this? Three men simple came striding out of the general gloom, one uniformed, and they all walked like cops. Damn. But Donovan smiled and snapped them a proper salute, remembering in time not to stab his right rear. The cops looked him over briefly and nodded, then turned to Coy. Coy muttered softly, "Of course, the only thing missing." Then he clicked his smile in place. "Officers?" "Are you Bart Coy?" asked Fred in the uniform. "And are you responsible for this show?" He waved at the tables and the thinly disguised satyrs. "Yes, this is my business and my staff. I'm a caterer. Do you have a license to sell beer and wine here? Because I think I'd have heard about it." "Oh, I see. No, I don't have that license, but I'm not selling. The refreshments are free tonight." He spoke calmly, smoothly, but Donovan thought he looked taut as a bowstring. It would be no surprise if he fainted. It would be no surprise if he punched the cop. Fred and his friends all frowned, their copper's instincts insulted. "Now, why," began Fred. Coy's voice went up half an octave. "I staged this party as a present to Mr. Vimont." He gestured at the north view of a south-facing Vimont, apparently on a horse, or apparently under a man, however you wanted to look at it, deep in an intense phone conversation. "I came to ask him for a loan. In fact, he's talking to someone about it now." His voice fell to a mutter. "Or about the possibility." "Even given it away," Fred said. "I don't think it's," but he was cut off again, this time by Bill, anxious to get his unsundered friends away. "I'm not sure either, Fred," he said, "but I think our time is better spent keeping a lookout for drunken disorderly. Leave him to it. Looks as though he has enough troubles." "Never a truer word," said Coy to their retreating backs, still in the same tense mutter. Donovan heard and wondered if he should pity. For justice's sake, he thought to himself, I hope he's a bad man. A good man wouldn't deserve this. Deirdre picked her way across the dark pasture much more slowly than in her panicked dash. She reflected that she was lucky not to have fallen or broken an ankle. Corno paced along, 2 meters to her right. She had long known that satyrs had more than human night vision, but it had been an academic fact. Now it was useful as he warned her of rocks and tufts and thistles. "I'm sorry to cause trouble," she said to him, trying to sound grateful. "You were startled," he answered. "But I did know Rollo would be here and had changed." "It is quite another thing to encounter the fact." "Yes, it was." She groped for another topic. A little chat seemed only polite. "I'm still baffled why he did it." Then, in what seemed like a bright idea, she asked, "Why did you transform, Corno?" After a little silence, he answered calmly, "In the usual way. I did not mean to." The idea no longer seemed bright, but it was too late. "Oh, it was an accident? It's usually an accident?" He sighed. "Yes, I was a bookish sort. I was, in fact, a professor. I thought roistering with satyrs, the arousal they bring, would make me more rounded." He snorted. "And as one does, as many men have, I lost track of how much exposure I took. I woke up after one too many orgies, and I was this." "Oh, I'm so sorry, since you didn't want it." "Not many do. Even fewer do after the change." "But you seem so happy." She thought back to the summer with Rollo in Avignon. "We are actors. We sell bacchanals. and the party is a good time for many of us. Deirdre wondered, not for you? Was this at one of Coy's parties? She asked. They were close enough to the fire she could see him shake his horns. Coy was not even born then. Deirdre thought of asking how he came to work for Coy, but remembered how her opening question had turned out and stayed silent. It didn't matter. Coy bought my service oath from my previous owner, he told her. There is a little bush here. I see, thank you. What is Coy like to work for? She had decided he was enjoying his chance to vent, or at least taking satisfaction. Corno sighed. There are two kinds of fawn masters, the kind who enjoy having slaves to bully, and the cold-blooded kind who just make use of you. The cold-blooded kind are better. They protect their property. Coy is cold-blooded, not too bad. He does not pimp us out very often or to bad customers. He is careful and has had only 4 men change at his bacchanals in all his career. Such events are bad for business. Deirdre took a startled moment to file away the news about pimping for future consideration, then asked, Did he take them in? Corno shook his head. All depends on circumstance. Only one did he take in, Timmy Tips, a trained dancer. Another he had chased into the woods. For the other 2, he bought one-way tickets to far places. What places? Spanish North Coast, French South Coast, near forest. We can live in such places. Even when dumped naked, ignorant, transformed, and no longer able to show your face to the unsundered world. What do you do for Coy? She asked, hoping it did not involve the pimping, and reminding herself that he was oath-bound, that whatever he did, he had little choice. Straw boss, Corno answered. Order the boys around to set things up, break them down, keep them sober when they have to be, let them be drunk or stoned when they need to be, get the charcoal or emetic down them as needed, provide occasional comic relief. Comic relief? At the parties. Papa Silenus, Silenus, the drunken sage of the satyrs, Dionysus' foster father. Fat old soak, not sexy, just funny, all pratfalls and belches. I had thought, she said slowly, that a satyr's life was an alternation of partying and lazing around. That is what you are supposed to think. But it is not a life of continual pleasure. It is incessant arousal. Arousal is not pleasure. Pleasure is not happiness. Happiness is not joy. Silenus is supposed to be the wisdom of the wine, the mentor of Dionysus. If that is the role I must be cast in, please take the wisdom I can offer. I'm not sure I understand. Then please remember it until you do. I'm sorry, old lad, said Vimont, turning back to Coy and Donovan. That is, I have something here, but my dad said that even if he wanted to, he said he couldn't, not tonight. Something about liquids. Liquidity, suggested Donovan. Plenty of assets, but he can't turn them into cash all in a moment. He was watching Coy, who had his eyes tight shut as though in pain. Yes, but he gave me a number. Here, he trotted to Coy and handed him his phone. Said it was for a spell broker he knew. Honest, deals in large sums. Coy started to copy in the number, then halted as his phone recognized it. Is this a joke? He demanded. This is Delahaye. She's the one I owe. He threw Vimont's phone on the ground and glared at Vimont. Do you think this is funny? Teasing the poor prole as he slides down the hill to the monsters? Donovan had started to smile, then thought better, but it didn't matter. Coy was fixed on Vimont, who only looked startled. You've got it, Coy insisted. I know you've got it. That flat, that car, that damned horse of yours. All just toys to you. Your family is as rich as Midas. What do you want from me? He asked, more a demand than a question. I'll take any service oath you want. I'll give you the satyr's oaths. I'll be your spy, your pimp, your agent, your anything. Really, old lad, my family doesn't need you. No, they don't need. Of course they don't. If they don't need you, if they'll throw away a son, they certainly won't lean down to bother about me. He saw shock and hurt in Vimont's face. You didn't know? You didn't guess? Most discarded heirs at least know it. Didn't your father ever tell you what kind of baron you'd make? Tell you that you were thick-witted and impulsive and couldn't keep your pants zipped? And hasn't he found the perfect fix for that? Hasn't he put you in the barnyard with the other livestock? I may end this night with a tail as long as yours, but at least it wasn't pinned on me by my own father. No, you'll have done it to yourself, Donovan snapped. Coy screamed in rage and dashed back to the tables. Donovan watched him go, wishing he had found words sooner. Perhaps a hoof to Coy's head would have been better. He'd need words soon. Weimont might ask him to swear by his name or his honor or by St. Martin or Michael or some other celestial badass that Coy had lied, but Coy had spoken only truth. And here it came. Bill, Weimont begged, is that true? Alas, yes. Well, as far as it went, it was only a half truth. The half truth was a lie. Weimont had been transformed within seconds of Donovan. Donovan had been preoccupied as never before, new legs, a tail, a whole new second body, his best friend in the same case as himself. But he had still noticed the mingled grief and pride on his parents' faces when they came in afterward, and he'd caught bits and pieces of the reactions of the other families. He'd compared notes later with the others. Baron Weimont and his wife had sorrowed whenever Weimont wasn't looking. So had his brother and sisters. But they had congratulated him and put on proud faces for him. Exasperating and unsuitable to the baronage he might be, but they loved him and wanted him to be happy. Right. Charge. Your dad didn't throw you away, Donovan announced, as if this were as obvious as that it was dark tonight. Don't you have a command performance coming up at Christmas? Yes, you're out of the succession, but you didn't want to be in the succession, did you? Oh, no, all that paperwork and business deals and politics. And you and your dad talked about that, didn't you? Oh, yes, we agreed I'd do better as a soldier. Well, then, he just helped you pick your career. Coy is upset, very natural, so he's lashing out. You tried to help and it fell through. The little git would be grateful if he could think straight just now, that's all. And if that was a half truth, it was a better and more nearly whole one than Coy's, as Donovan would argue to St. Michael or whoever if the time ever came. But Weimont didn't ask for an oath. He just gave a slightly watery smile and said, Thanks, Bill. Then he looked into the dark and asked, But where's Deirdre? Rollo, is that you? Deirdre asked. They were nearing the bonfire now, and she could see what looked like a man on horseback walking along with them on the far side of Corno. She could also see it was really a centaur. No, miss, the shape replied. Cavalryman Bennett Darcy at your service, miss. He saluted her. Mr. Darcy brought me to you, Corno said briefly. Then thank you, Mr. Darcy. Quite welcome, miss. My pal Bill Donovan kept Mr. Weimont back, so you wouldn't be alarmed. But you can see them up ahead now. Do you want... He trailed off. It's fine. I won't be alarmed anymore. That was... I'm sorry to have caused a fuss. Not at all, miss, and I'm sure Rollo didn't mean to startle you. I'm sure too, she answered, now remembering his fondness for hugs. She picked up her pace and aimed for Rollo and his big red friend. The friend, Bill Donovan, was no trouble to look at, a combination of handsome and odd. So was Mr. Darcy, now becoming visible as they approached the light. It was Rollo whose appearance made her cringe. No doubt because she knew him before. That was it. Analyze the situation. Divide each difficulty into as many parts as is feasible and necessary to resolve it, she quoted to herself, and always try to master yourself. Thank you, Dr. Descartes. She concentrated on the part of Rollo she knew, wearing a smart uniform jacket and a dashing curly beard. And a worried expression, poor lamb. Or colt. She was able to smile a fraction. No problems, pretty pony, she called. He turned, grinned, and once more spread arms and stepped forward. Deirdre held her smile, but Donovan gave a loud, whickering cough. Weimont checked. The worried look flashed back. Then, slowly and carefully, clearly afraid she would bolt again, he knelt, reclining, making himself lower than she and less mobile. The smile and the welcoming arms returned, though not confidently. She marched up to him, completed the hug, and kissed his cheek. Above their heads, Darcy and Donovan exchanged thumbs up. I will see to the tables, Corno announced, marching on. Well done, gentlemen, a familiar voice said, and the two Foster brothers turned to see Fletcher approaching, trailed by Sanders and a woman new to them, Delahaye. Darcy started to make introductions, but Delahaye interrupted. Do any of you know where Coy's got to now? He ran off to the tables, ma'am, Donovan said. Well, he's not there now. She looked at Deirdre, who was exchanging apologies with Vimont. Has he gone to fetch any more surprises out of the dark? I'm sure I don't know, ma'am. He left in quite a state. Looks like he's losing a bet with a bug. Yes, said Fletcher, we've met the bug. They pooled information for a few minutes until Corno walked up. He was now in a pair of ragged shorts. He addressed himself to Delahaye and Fletcher. Lady and sir, you should know that Coy is gone, along with a small white van and two of the boys, Caper and Timmy. I have no idea where or why. He can't run away from the oath, Delahaye averred. Rob a bank, Donovan suggested brightly. Or does someone around here have some good jewelry? Darcy gave an amused sniff, but Corno said he has no skills or spells or weapons for such a thing. Or the time, Fletcher remarked. Why 11 o'clock, ma'am? Isn't midnight or dawn more usual? When it's 11 o'clock here, Delahaye replied. It's midnight in Zurich, and that's where the oath was sworn. Ah, and why those two fellows, Caper and Timmy? Are they particularly favored servants? Corno shook his head. They are the two he took into your town with the van to look for Mr. Vimont. They have short horns and are easy to disguise, that is all. So did he take them back to Upham? Asked Fletcher, and of course, why? Delahaye took out her dowsing stick again. If I could tell his direction, we'd have a clue. She twiddled the stick for a few seconds, but shook her head. Rollo, said Donovan, lend the lady your phone, would you? Ma'am, he said to Delahaye, Coy used it just a little while ago about the debt and was in a rare temper when he did it. All that could help, right? Delahaye nodded and accepted the phone Vimont passed her, but the results were no better. She passed the phone to Fletcher, who contemplated it a moment, then shook his head. Warded, he said, and she nodded. Does it matter? Asked Sanders. It sounds like come 11, he's going to turn into a satyr and then be claimed by Faleno no matter what. Probably, agreed Delahaye, but he's hopping around like a flea on a griddle trying to prevent it. I just wonder what he's up to. So do I, said Fletcher. He's up for trying something drastic. I will ask among the boys, said Corno, to find if any of them saw or heard anything to the purpose. I need to call them in anyway to get their pants on. If he is abandoning us, voluntarily or not, there is no further point to these antics. Thank you, sir, said Fletcher. Will your boys follow you once Coy is gone? I think so, yes, most of them. And where would you take them? I gather you don't want to go on catering bacchanals. Corno sighed. I would seek a way off this earth, out of zone, find some zone with warm winters, woods, farms where we could hire as labor. A big step up for us. Vineyards are good, of course. He sighed again. Wishes. I shall go attend to business. He turned and left. Little wishes, Sanders muttered. Anything bigger has been kicked out of him, Fletcher replied, low. The passage in the wood, Sanders suggested. Fletcher nodded. I will ask. We are sure to see some fays on the way back tonight. Then he added at normal volume, First, let's see the end of Coy's business. But there was, for some time, nothing to see. Potatoes for roasting showed up. Satyrs in shorts came up and offered snacks and drinks. The music shifted to folk tunes at a low volume. Then Vimont's phone rang. It's him, Vimont exclaimed, looking at the ID. Unprompted, he put it on speaker and held it out. Vimont, barked Coy, listen to this. Then to someone else, poke it again. There was a mumbling in a more distant voice. Poke it! There was the squeal of a horse in fear or pain. That's Zelda, Vimont exclaimed. Yes, it is, Coy answered. And if you want her back, pay up. I have a gun. Don't call back unless it's to say you've paid. He hung up. Everyone looked at Vimont. I can't, he said. I really can't. If I could. Fletcher turned toward the tables and bellowed, Corno! The Silenus hasted over. Does Coy have a gun? Carnot stared. He does. I have only seen it 3 times or 4, but you can easily believe he is often in unsavory company. What has happened? He's kidnapped Mr. Vimont's mare for ransom. He's threatened with a gun. I think he would use it. To me, to us, a horse is almost like a child. To him, I think it is just property. What do you think he would do? Corno sighed and nodded. He will not shoot while there is any chance. But the moment he recovers from the change, he will shoot in revenge, as he will think of it. Right. Fletcher stared blankly into the bonfire for a few seconds. Our only chance is a physical meeting. He won't talk except about payment, and he'll stop talking when he sees no incoming cash or energy. But we can't find him, said Delahaye. He's warded. Zelda's not. Mr. Vimont, come here. Vimont obeyed, and Fletcher put a hand on his shoulder, then pointed with the other. Straight toward Upham, moving away slowly. Madame Delahaye, can you do the same? She reached up to Vimont's elbow, twiddled her dowsing wand, and nodded. Can you hold the fix while moving? She nodded again. Then let's get going. How can you catch him? Asked Deirdre. He has the van. He may be moving slowly now, but... And you don't really know where he is. You just have a direction, not a position. As to the van, it's limited to roads. We can go cross-country, Fletcher answered. We'll split up and triangulate to locate him. That is, he turned to Delahaye, if you really are willing to help. You don't really have a horse in this race. The oath will see you paid no matter what. She looked indignant. Do you think I'm purely coin-operated? I want to see the little git foiled. Fletcher nodded. Thank you. Mr. Darcy, please assist. Darcy crouched down next to Delahaye. I'm sorry we have no saddles, Fletcher said. Delahaye waved this away, shed her coat, and threw it over Darcy's back. Bareback isn't as hard as people think in the short run. She scrambled aboard. Hold to the heavy braiding on my jacket, ma'am, Darcy told her, rising carefully. Fletcher turned to Corno next. Are you willing to help? Yes. Mr. Donovan. Donovan crouched down and took on Corno, muttering, glad he put on pants. You four, said Fletcher, head straight back to Upham through the woods. Delahaye, call me if the bearing moves. Sanders and I will, let's see, east or west? Guess, sir, said Sanders. You're good at it. Immediately, Fletcher said, Sanders and I will head east along Whiffburn Road and then cut across to Upham. I will call you, Delahaye, if the bearing does anything odd. Maybe we can box him in on the Silchester Road. Right. Mr. Vimont, go to the ferry copse and ask Chiswick for help. Chiswick, sir? The brownie at the Bow and Saber's stable. Zelda was stolen from his stable. He may feel it touches his honor. Deirdre immediately reached up and grabbed the braiding on Vimont's back. Let me on, she told him. Quoth Vimont. If it's phase, there may be glamour. I can help. Thank you, miss, said Fletcher. Vimont knelt. Following Delahaye's example, Deirdre threw her orange coat over his back and jumped on. Right, said Fletcher. Charge. And we'll find out what the charge brings next time.